You.
Good morning, guys. What's up?
We are awesome. We have the Hall of Fame game is on Thursday, and I'm hearing Caleb's
you guys got to be so fired up for that.
Oh, yeah, so excited.
I used to fall into that trap when I was younger. I'd be really fired up. The football back on TV, and then it takes like 3 minutes for you to remember what they're actually putting out there. So yeah. I don't know the last time I actually made it through a Hall of Fame game.
Yeah, Caleb's not going to – they haven't announced this, but I'm hearing Caleb's not going to see the field. A lot of the starters are not. It's going to be like Tyson Bagent starting at quarterback. Does that surprise you at all?
No. I think the part of the problem with a game like this where nobody's going to play is when you get in the the second preseason game, say, and you have a lot of starters out there, I do think that there's a little bit more of an understanding of taking care of each other. And players always talk about this, right? Knowing how to practice. And it takes a while for an NFL player to learn how to practice. And what that means is you are going out there and you're practicing hard and you're working on your craft. But, everybody has the same goal, which is to get to the regular season, which is each week during the regular season to get to Sunday as healthy as you possibly can. And I do think, in those preseason games when starters are out there, there is a code and there is a let's take care of each other. And, I think when you get deeper into the games, that exists a little bit less because you have younger players out there who are fighting for roster spots. And, I think that's a big part of the reason it kind of goes unspoken to why, teams do these things. And it's why coaches, quite honestly, communicate with each other before preseason games and try to give each other, if they've got a relationship, their plans for who they're going to put out there. And that's why oftentimes you see the approach by two teams match up, because, it's not a great situation to be in to put your starting players out there against guys who are way down the roster and trying to make teams, so I think that's a huge part of it. You aren't going to go into this game with the other team wanting to risk much at all. And so, by rule, then you would say it's not worth risking my guys in an environment that might be a little bit less controlled than if the starters were out there.
Albert, what does it say about the development or lack of development of quarterbacks in the NFL when you are faced to having to pay what I would say middle of the road or above average quarterbacks the money that's being doled out now? There was a time that all three of us, the audience, grew up in which you had your starter and your backup was a veteran that you would not be embarrassing, that could actually help you. So what does that say for these teams? I'll use Miami as an example with Tua. There's nothing after Tua, so it's we got to pay him. There's nothing after Daniel Jones, we got to pay him. So what does that say about development or lack thereof in the league?
Yeah. Well, Hoodie, first of all, I would say, I feel like I have to say this, and, and I genuinely mean it. I'm really happy for Tua, based on everything that he's been through, that he did get paid, because that hip injury he had in college very well could have ended his career. The concussion thing was scary as hell. So I'm really glad that he got to the point where he could secure that kind of wealth for his family. That's first of all. And I just feel like in this case in particular, it's important that you say that first. I don't know, man. This has been a problem forever where it's really, the spending of quarterback gets out of control and then it gets to a tipping point and then everybody's trying to figure out where the B level is for the quarterbacks and creatively figure out ways to pay the second tier quarterbacks a little bit differently. And I think right now where you see that is in the cash flow and the outs, right? So Joe Burrow, for instance, is getting his cash a lot faster than Trevor Lawrence. And Joe Burrow has guarantees for longer than Trevor Lawrence does over the life of his contract, right? Joe Burrow's contract provides him way more security long-term than Tua has with his contract, which is basically a 3-year deal, or Jordan Love has with his contract, which is basically a 3-year deal. And I think we got to the point where the numbers are this big across the board because teams are afraid of what's behind door number 2. And they don't want to be incompetent at that position because that can lead to you getting fired, right? But I would argue that there are better answers behind door number 2 than we've seen in the past. I mean, look at what the Bucs did, right? Let me ask you guys this. Is Baker Mayfield a worse quarterback, a demonstrably worse quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa?
He is not, actually. Baker's gotten better. Baker deserves this.
I don't think he is, right? I don't think he's worse, and he's half the price, right? Is Geno Smith that much worse than Tua?
No, and they both are coming off really good years.
Right. So, like, if you're one of these teams, could you say, you know what, we're going to draw a line right here. You can take it or leave it. If you don't want it, fine. That's generational wealth on the table. But, we're going to go out and do something else after the year and trust that there's going to be an answer there. That's I give the Vikings credit for drawing a line, But the Vikings did it. And now I'd say if you're the Dolphins, and I've said this a couple different places, I would have drawn a line with Tua, and I would have said, no, we love you, Tua. We'll pay you 40, right? But we got to draw a line somewhere. And if you don't want to take it, play the year out, go to free agency, and look, Atlanta might be willing to deal us Kirk Cousins, and the big money's off of his contract now, and we can get him for half what you cost, right? So I just think that if you're creative about it, there are more answers behind door number 2 than there have been in the past. But understandably, teams are afraid to go into that great unknown the way, say, the Vikings did this offseason, or even the Buccaneers did after Tom Brady left.
In terms of the Bears defense, everyone's saying they look amazing at camp, and iron hardens iron, and it's Caleb going up against this great defense. But the Bears are still in the market to maybe bring in help on the D-line. We saw Matthew Judon storm out of Patriots camp. Trey Hendrickson's not practicing. Hassan Reddick's not practicing. Are any of these guys available in a deal?
I would say Hendrickson, no. Mm-hmm. I would say Reddick, no.
Mm-hmm.
If I were the Bears, I would pick up the phone and call about Judon. Here's the thing with the Judon situation. And the reason I say no on Reddick is because the Jets just acquired him and they're in win now mode. And I think Reddick knows that. And I think Reddick's taking advantage of it, probably smartly, right? And so he is in a spot where he can say, you need me to win right now. You need to replace Bryce Hoff on the defensive line. You should pay me now. Trey Hendrickson, I think, eventually gets his payday there in Cincinnati, because, again, they're another team that's in a win-now position. I look at it with Judon in New England, and, they paid Christian Barmore. They paid a lot of other guys who aren't as good as Judon. And he's set to make $7.5 million this year. And I don't know how far they're going to have to go to make him happy, but I don't think it's $1 million or $2 million. I think it's more than that. And so I would at least fish around that one if I were the Bears. And I think he could be a really good fit for Matt Eberflus's defense. So, yeah, I mean, if I were the Bears, that's probably the one I would make the phone call on. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Jets, and the Bengals are prime Super Bowl contenders and the Patriots are not.
Albert Breer with us here every Tuesday on the Kap and J Hood Morning Show. You're at 49ers camp, and every time I think about San Francisco, I think San Francisco's got a lot going for them, but blank. And there's always this blank, right?
Yeah.
So what's missing from the 49ers?
Well, Trent Williams right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, Brandon Ayuk, they're sort of in this position where they've got, and again, this is a champagne problem, of course. Too many good players, not enough money to go around. But I think what we're seeing across the league right now is more and more players are not afraid to put their foot down and say, mid-contract, I want an adjustment, and I want that adjustment now. And, I think it's because players have seen what's happened with older players. Teams are getting more aggressive about getting rid of players when they lose a step, and they know those years in the back ends of their contracts aren't going to be honored. Which credits them for having the business sense to think that way. And so, we've seen Matthew Stafford get a bump. We saw Max Crosby get a bump. And then there in San Francisco, we saw Christian McCaffrey get a bump. And they paid McCaffrey first because they knew if they paid Ayuk before McCaffrey, that could cause a problem, right? Because then, does McCaffrey want more? And now, because you saw McCaffrey get paid, you got Trent Williams saying, well, wait a minute, I'm making 20 this year. There's a huge number around 30 in 2 years. You need to move some money up and give it to me now. So I think the business things are what they're working through. From a football standpoint, I think all these guys will be on the field in September. And it's a loaded team. I mean, we were asking a lot of questions about quarterback a year ago. I don't think we're asking those questions anymore. If they're like all in there, if they're full of Voltron when we get to September, I don't know where the hole on the roster is.
Last thing from me, Tristan Wirfs is also a guy who they said is miles apart with the Buccaneers. If the Bears called and said Braxton Jones and a pick, can they get him or no shot?
No shot. The Bucs love Tristan Wirfs, and Tristan Wirfs is very much a part of their future. You do not deal away. I mean, despite what Miami did a few years ago with Laramie Tunsil, you generally do not trade away a top 5 tackle. So, things aren't in the best spot right now, but I'd assume the Bucs find a middle ground at some point with Tristan Wirfs. They have every intention of signing him long term. I look at it sort of like the Ayuk situation. The difference being that, like, the Niners have a wealth of skill position players, in Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, where the Buccaneers don't really have a safety net past Wirfs to tackle. So yeah, man, I would be surprised if the Niners traded Brandon Ayuk. I would be shocked if the Bucs traded Tristan Wirfs.
What is going on at Patriots camp? Frank from Fall River can't be happy about guys walking off at camp. Have you seen this? What is going on, Albert? That's not good for the first year of Mayo.
Yeah, what I said earlier, I mean, I think that there's a couple things that work. First, they've paid a lot of guys, and they felt like they had to do that because under Belichick, they were very, very tight about who they paid, very disciplined about who they paid. So, I think they wanted to reward guys in the locker room and create, a good environment in there and make guys feel appreciated. The problem with that is you can't pay everybody. And, when you pay one guy, the next guy is going to notice. And the next guy, and a lot of guys in a locker room, I think I would argue probably all of them, I can't say that for a fact, but a lot of guys are in there keeping score. And, I think that's a big part of, what we saw with Matthew Judon yesterday. And, there's also that whole, substitute teacher thing. I covered the Cowboys. I was in the beat at the Dallas Morning News the year after Bill Parcells left. And I remember, like, that first year they were really good, but there was like this feeling in the locker room, like the really tough, hard-nosed teacher had left, and there was a substitute there. And that wasn't really Wade's fault. It's just what the players were coming off of. And so that's something I think that Gerard Mayo, that sort of thing, that's something Gerard Mayo has to have his radar up for.
Hey, man, have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your camp tours, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
See ya. There he is, Albert Breer on the CarX Tire and Auto Hotline.
Rattle, rattle, thunder, clatter, boom, boom, boom. Don't worry, call the CarX man.
Kap and J Hood, weekday mornings.